allegiance. Nate, will you lead us, please?
To the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this meeting is being recorded and is available via Zoom. And the instructions on how to log on to Zoom are included on in the agenda for tonight's meeting. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner DeMartini?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson? Commissioner DePillo?
Here.
Chairman Ondurko?
Here. Okay, thank you. At this time, we are going to move to public comment for items not on the agenda. There are quite a few people from the public. We are happy that you're here. Welcome tonight. There is one item on the agenda. At this time, we're going to open it up for public comment for items not on the agenda. So please come forward and state your name, if you will, and we are going to limit public comment on this section and for items on the agenda to 3 minutes. So we'll open it up to public comment now.
Good evening, Dave Daly, live in Delmar Avenue. Planning Commission, we're going to be building 3 more schools in Loomis for kids that don't live in Loomis. We don't need no more schools built in Loomis. We already have 5. They plan on building them on Sierra College, which is going to be a nightmare. You can't even get through our town of Loomis in the morning, not less try to get in and out of 2 schools on Sierra College, 1 right off of Sierra College in Delmar, and 1 right on Sierra College. It's not fair that the town of Loomis is getting stuck with all these kids that don't even live in our town. I know they live in this school district, and it's really hard to swallow that pill, but these kids aren't paying taxes in Loomis. They live in other towns, and they're going to be paying taxes at the towns they live in. And Loomis should not be the dumping ground for everybody's kid. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christy, thank you for the easel. It has always been the wish of Loomis to have an alternative to Taylor Road to link Horseshoe Bar Road with King Road. That has been the idea of having an extension of Boynton Road running along the inside of the perimeter fence to Horseshoe Bar Road. The new project proposed does not provide for that, but I think there's a better way to do this that would be outside of the area of this development, and that would be along the freeway right-of-way, providing a weed lane. This is number 4 lane.
Excuse me, if we're talking about the Boynton Road or Hidden Grove project, we should save that for the time when we're talking about the project.
Yeah, I mean, you can say whatever you want, but this is time is dedicated for items not on the agenda. So happy to hear about it, but
Are you aware that the town should reserve that property necessary to do this because it is tied with the rest of the town, with traffic and also with the need to get people in and out of this area. And it's been proposed in the past that there's a need for an on-ramp here from King Road. Because really the center of town is King and Taylor, where you have the high school, the elementary school, Swetzer Industrial, and all this residential area. And the traffic comes through the biggest intersection we have in the town. Not here, outside here, which is only a T intersection, does not go through to Sierra College. If we had an on-ramp here, it could vent all this traffic out onto the freeway. And then by having this off-ramp, we'd eliminate this off-ramp on the other side, which is underside, was built in 1960. It's too tight, and it now does not allow enough traffic to get off this river crossing because the traffic starts backing onto the freeway. There are times during the day when this slow lane here is stopped. You don't want to be in stopped traffic. I will dedicate the rest of my time to someone else. And I don't think, well, we don't have the money to do that right now, but we should reserve this property. And it's not much, it's just this 40-foot wide stretch here behind Rayleigh's. And up here, ideally, this would be a roundabout, and then the on-ramp. And I'm prepared right now to donate money towards this. My 2 cents worth. Inflation adjusted for Biden economics. I'll give that to the town manager. Keep this. But keep this in mind. Reserve this for the town's future. Here and here.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments for items not on the agenda from the public? Okay, we're going to move to Zoom. Open it up. Who do we have here?
Pam
Okay.
Blake.
All right. Go ahead, Pam.
Oh, hi there. I couldn't hear the gentleman with the poster board. Just an FYI, he moved away from the microphone, and I don't know who he was, whether he lives in the town of Loomis or not. But my comment is for the possibility at the last town council meeting on the agenda. It was noted that the 7 p.m. change of time be changed to 6 p.m. And so I'm putting this out here now, whether the Planning Commission in the future is also going to be thinking about changing the time from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. So I spoke out against it at the town council meeting for all the working people and families. And I'm just bringing it up now for the future because I will speak out against it again if there's any thought in the future for changing the time from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Any other hands up on Zoom? Okay, seeing and hearing no more hands raised, we are going to close public comment for items not on the agenda. And then at this point, we'll move to the adoption of the agenda.
I so move.
I'll second.
Just to open that up for public comment also. So we're going to... Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Kelly.
Yes.
Commissioner DePillo.
Yes.
Commissioner DeMartini.
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly. Or Commissioner Wilson, sorry. Chairman Ondergo.
Yes. Okay, the agenda is adopted. Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to the consent agenda and open it up for public comment for on the consent agenda. So, anyone here from the public wish to speak on the consent agenda? Okay, we'll move it over to the Zoom. Any hands raised for the consent agenda?
No hands raised.
Okay, let's close public comment on that item. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adopt. Consent agenda. Second.
Okay. Sarah, please call the roll. We have a motion and a second.
Commissioner DePillo.
Yes.
Commissioner DeMartini.
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson. Yes. Chairman Ondergo.
Yes. Okay, the consent agenda is adopted. So tonight there is one item of business, and we have staff presentation. The applicant may be here. We're going to have time for public comment on this item. Let me just be clear. There is a multi-step process here with any application for development. This is the first public hearing on this item. The purpose of tonight is to provide comment both from the commission and the public on what we would like to see focused on the EIR. EIR is the environmental report that every applicant for development is required to provide. That includes many things, many impacts that a development may bring to the area. And so there is going to be multiple meetings involved with this project if it is moved forward. This is not a night where any, excuse me, any decisions will be made as far as approval or recommendations for the project. That will come at a later date. So tonight, we hope that we have public input from people about what you would like to see on the EIR once again. Again, you're free to say whatever you want as far as I don't like the project. You like the project. That's I guess it's okay, but that's not the purpose tonight. All right. So I would hope that we can be precise in what people are looking for as far as, again, how we're looking to address the impacts of the proposed project. Again, no decision will be made on the project tonight. So with that said, let's start with staff and their presentation of the proposed project.
And Mr. Chairman, before we begin, due to the proximity of my residence to the project, I do need to recuse myself from this.
Okay. Let the record show that Ryan is recusing himself from this hearing and future hearings. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Chairman Undergo. I have a presentation, and first, before I go into the presentation, I'd like to introduce Rod Stinson with Rainey Planning and Management. He and his team at Rainey will be preparing the environmental impact report for this project. So a little overview of this presentation. We'll be going over the CEQA process. So that's the California Environmental Quality Act process, which is our state's reviewing process for projects, analyzing their environmental impacts. Next, we'll go into the purpose of the scoping meeting and give a project summary, and then receive public input on the scope and content of the EIR. So going to the CEQA process, we are at the pretty much early stages of this. So we had prepared and distributed the notice of preparation that went out on December 22nd. It will close this Friday on January 26th. So it's a 30-day review period where people can submit their comments on the notice of preparation and the initial study that was prepared. Tonight we are having the scoping meeting. So scoping meeting will then be followed by a review and evaluation of the comments received. So Rainey will collect and compile those comments, and that will give them direction for content of the EIR. Then they'll prepare the draft environmental impact report, which will then go to public and agency review after 45 days. Then we'll have a public meeting for the draft, and then based on those comments received on the draft, a final environmental impact report will be prepared that would include responses to comments. And then following that, the environmental impact report would go to the Planning Commission and Town Council for hearings, with a notice of determination filed at the conclusion of that process. So our scoping meeting purpose, under the California Environmental Quality Act, when preparing an environmental impact report, there should be a scoping session going on, whether it's written or in a public meeting. But it's an opportunity for the public to comment on the range of environmental issues that should be studied in the environmental impact report. It's not, what scoping meetings are not, are they're not an opportunity to discuss the merits of a project. It is strictly looking at what is the content that should be included in the studies for the environmental impact report. It's also not a question and answer session. It's really information gathering. So just to give a summary of the project, it is proposed under Senate Bill 330, which is the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. What SB 330 does is it streamlines projects for review. It prohibits local agencies from taking certain actions to limit housing production, and makes the process of getting housing projects reviewed and approved faster. Projects must comply only with the objective standards and policies of the town. The act limits the town to 5 total hearings. So tonight's meeting is not one of those hearings, but in total, we are limited between Planning Commission and Council to those 5 hearings. The focus on the analysis for projects under SB 330 should be health and safety risks. We're looking at all the impacts of a project, but health and safety risks in particular. So the project includes the development of a 353 unit residential community. So in units A through D, and I'll have a figure to look at in just a minute, there are 204 single-family lots proposed. On another unit, it's on a single parcel, there are 140 multifamily units proposed on one lot. That would include approximately 85 affordable housing units. The town center commercial lot, it's a small portion of the project, but that would have potentially up to 9 residential units. The project also proposes 12.8 acres of open space and parks. So of that 12.8 acres, 10.5 would be the open space of the riparian wetland area, and then 2.3 acres would be active parks. So one 1.3 acre park adjacent to the library, a 0.8 acre park near the open space area, and a 0.2 acre park near Webb Street. Roadways with reservation of land for a Boyington Road extension and infrastructure, including stormwater basins, are also proposed. The project proposes the removal of about 1,400 trees. And the applicant is requesting incentives and concessions associated with providing affordable housing under California Government Code Section 65915. This is probably really hard to read for most people, but it's a table of the proposed land uses. So looking at the different units that they are proposing, the number of units in each of those areas, and the acreage of those areas. So you'll see there are single-family residences totaling 204 units, multifamily totaling 149 units, the open space and parkland area we discussed. There Also, in addition to the parks and open space, are landscaping areas and stormwater basins. And then for roadways, we have extension of Library Drive and a reservation for Boyington Road extension. So on this slide, you'll see the boundaries of the project. So it's a little illustration showing the limits. So we're looking at the area immediately north of the Rayleigh's shopping center, bound by I-80 to the east, King Road up top, and then you have the residences, the neighborhoods along Laird Street and David Drive, and then coming out to Laird Street again and Horseshoe Bar Road. Oh, that didn't show up very well. A little error in there, but this map is supposed to be an image showing the general plan designation for each of the areas. So my apologies that that's not showing up properly on that screen. The next slide is showing an overview of the entire project. And we'll go to the next slide. It's a little easier. So here you have Horseshoe Bar Road, Library Drive, Laird Street, and the housing units that are to the west of the project. So you'll see the housing units up here, and then Lot A, which is the park area, the 1.2 acre park, and then Unit E here is the multifamily. There's another lot over here that would be a park, and the open space over here, and then this would be the small commercial lot right here. And then moving on, we have the open space area here. More housing units. These are all single family units over here. And then interspersed here, you can see some of the stormwater basins. And then moving up towards King Road, you have a few more homes in this area and some water quality basins. So with that, I will turn it over to Rod to discuss the environmental impact report.
All right. Thank you. And you can switch to the next slide, I think. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. Rod Stinson with Rainey Planning and Management. And we are preparing the EIR for the proposed project. This next set of slides is going to go over what we're currently proposing to be the scope of the EIR. But before I get into that, I just wanted to give a quick broad level overview of CEQA and what CEQA is and the purpose of CEQA and the process. Christy went over a little bit of where we are in the process, but CEQA ultimately, California Environmental Quality Act, is intended for jurisdictions to consider the potential environmental impacts of a project before debating on that project and or potentially approving or denying that project, but have to consider the potential impacts. Also, what it requires and the purpose is for disclosure. So the documents that we prepare are intended to fully disclose the potential impacts of the project to the public. To that end, there are certain requirements in the process to involve the public, and that's one of the reasons why we're here today. The beginning of the process for an EIR, Environmental Impact Report, which is the largest of the CEQA documents that could be prepared, is the notice of preparation, and that lets everyone know that the town is intending to prepare an EIR, and we're soliciting comments on the scope of what that EIR should include. One of the smaller documents, the initial study, which was attached to the notice of preparation, goes through the whole list of required topics that CEQA requires the environmental analysis to cover. And it's attached to the NOP so that the public has an opportunity to review some of the topics that we dismissed from further review and the topics that we are going to include in the EIR. So that brings me now to this next set of slides. This is what we are currently proposing to include in the EIR. You can go back one. All right, so there's a couple of slides and there's 4 or 5 topics each, but in alphabetical order, we were planning to have an EIR chapter on air quality, and it's going to be a combined chapter that's going to cover air quality emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, as well as energy efficiency. And the modeling that's going to be prepared for this chapter is going to cover both construction emissions and operational emissions associated with the project. The next chapter that we are anticipating having is biology. You saw from the aerial that there's lots of green space in this project, lots of trees. So we're having a chapter that's going to address removal of trees, going to address biological impacts associated with species and habitat, as well as potential impacts to wetlands and jurisdictional waters. We're going to have a cultural resources chapter. That's going to be based on a cultural resources report, and it will identify archaeological, potential impacts to archaeological resources and historical resources. There's a separate chapter that we'll get to that looks at specifically tribal cultural resources. And then geological, geo and soil hazards. So does the project exist on any soils that are potentially unstable, and what are potential impacts associated with that? Okay, we can go to the next one, please.
Let me pause you right there.
Yeah.
So for any members of the public, if you're wanting just a summary again of these focus areas, page 22 in the packet will have a list of all the things that Rod just listed off. So our hope is that the comments tonight will be focused on those issue areas, okay?
Yes, and I'll touch it at the end as well, reiterating. But if we're receiving comments on the scope, it's not only those topics, but maybe, did we miss something? Provide a comment on whether there's something that we've missed in this scope that, as a local resident, you know there's a concern. That's the type of input that we would love to have, so that we make sure that it's an adequate document at the end for the town to use.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
All right, so we are going to have a hydrology and water quality chapter. It's going to look at stormwater runoff, potential for impacts during construction to water quality, but also after build out of the project, are there potential impacts related to downstream flooding, related to adjusting the peak flow, hydromodification, as well as water quality after construction is done. We're planning to have a noise chapter that will address potential impacts related to noise. That will include, primarily from a project like this, noise related to traffic volume increases. So we'll have a subcontractor do a report, and we'll incorporate it into our chapter. We'll also have public services and recreation chapter that look at public services such as police and fire protection, school, potential impacts to school capacity, school district, and libraries. And then there's recreation, so that'll look at parks and park acreage. There was one last one on there, and it was traffic, which is typically one of the main concerns for projects. So currently under CEQA, the newest metric for evaluating traffic impacts is we're required to now use vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. So there will be a VMT analysis that's going to be prepared that we will use for our chapter. In addition to VMT, we'll look at potential impacts to bike and pedestrian transit facilities, and access and safety related to those topics. And then, as I mentioned, tribal cultural resources will be its own chapter. That'll be based on the cultural resources report that is being prepared, but also the state requires through AB 52 that the town notify tribes and initiate a process by which tribes can consult with the town and provide feedback and input into the chapter. And so that's currently going on. There'll be a utilities and service systems chapter that will look at water and sewer demand, solid waste demand, things like that. And then, so that's the extent of the technical chapters that we are planning to include in the EIR. But I've added one more bullet here that also under CEQA we're required to look at a reasonable range of alternatives. So as we go through the analysis on those chapters, the alternatives are intended to be aimed at reducing any significant impacts that we identify. So alternatives currently aren't identified for the project. That happens a little later as we've gotten into the analysis. But there will be an analysis for alternatives. All right, so again, the purpose for tonight is to receive comments on the scope of the EIR. We're asking that folks limit their comments to that topic, not necessarily get into a debate or a question and answer session. Just as an example, I'm very concerned about traffic at this particular access point. Please make sure that the EIR addresses, safety at this location, for example, or loss of trees. I want to make sure that that's covered. Those types of comments. While we are going to be recording, and I'll be taking notes on the verbal comments, we do encourage written comments submitted. That's a little easier to include into the record, and they'll all be attached as an attachment or an appendix to the EIR eventually. There are some comment forms, I believe, at the back of the room. So please feel free, even if you do give verbal comments, to follow those up with written comments would be helpful for us. So those are in the back, and you can hand them in tonight or mail them in at the address shown on the screen or emailed. Let's see what else. Again, the comment period closes on Friday, 5 p.m., so be sure to get any written comments in by then. And again, limit the comments to the scope of the EIR. So I'll be here if there are any follow-up questions, but thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Rod. And just to note to everyone in the public, so this is the process for any application for development that the town has to follow, okay? And so this is all required by statute, and the process is meant to be open and fair, and this is part of due process for any applicant. So again, there's no decision that will be made tonight on the project. There's many more, several more meetings ahead on this, and we'll all have an opportunity to respond to the EIR or the draft EIR once it's produced. So what we'll do now is we are going to open it up for comments by the commissioners, and then from there we'll open it up to public comment. So let's do that.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Town. Thank you, folks, for showing up too. I'm sure there's going to be some duplication of some concerns and some issues, and I want to go ahead and express too as well that I'm still learning the process too. And so I want to shout out to the town for the support and the rest of the commissioners too as well. Rod, great job, by the way, at presenting what the EIR is going to scope in. So I'll probably reiterate a couple of things, but I want to make sure that it is expressed as a concern. So thank you very much. I think one of the first things that obviously has been an issue with Loomis for a while is the transportation. And obviously the traffic is a major problem. It's been a problem for a while. It was a problem with the Village project. We have a problem now, obviously, with Costco and others, but it's a good and bad problem to have, obviously. We have people who live here, people who commence here, and so forth. So one of the things I want to go ahead and reiterate is, I think this was said not too long ago, but that there's a traffic tsunami coming. So forgive me, whoever said that in the past from the public. It was actually a pretty good quote. And I do see that coming. And I think I'm not the only one that sees that coming too as well. What I want to do is kind of, and forgive me, again, my ignorance, mix the transportation with the public service a little bit. And that is the fire and law specifically. And I hope the EIR addresses this specifically in a very comprehensive, cumulative manner. I do see a health and safety problem with this plan currently as it stands. One of the things that kind of popped out to me is obviously where the location is, which is right behind Rayleigh's. It is on, west of Highway 80 and east of a Class A rail line. Right now, as it stands, one of the biggest threats, at least for me, I'm very familiar with infrastructure and risk, but trying to understand how the planning process goes and how the EIR goes. But one of the things I hope it addresses is understanding this is kind of a unique location. In combination with the traffic issues and the possibility of putting what approximately, and correct me if I'm wrong, about 815 people to 1,000 people in a densely populated area, which is 61.7 acres, there's a threat to the right when it comes to Highway 80 and the trucking and the increasing trucking hazards and possible hazardous materials being spilt there. And there's also a threat on the left or the east side with rail. One of the things I want to point out, obviously, and this was pointed out not too long ago, but East Palestine, Ohio in 2023. A rail derailment is a possibility. I think this has been addressed in the past. I think UP does a great job in trying to deal with man-made threats and natural threats, but it's something that could happen. If there is an evacuation, Hidden Grove is a stone's throw away from the rail side, and it's also a stone's throw away from Highway 80. And this is right in the middle. So if there is an egress issue, and again, understanding, I think the gentleman earlier talked about Boynton and some other things, but I would love to have the ER specifically and comprehensively address this problem, because as of right now, there doesn't seem to be the greatest egress. Because it's going to come out to right across from the VA, or right across from where Library Drive hits Horseshoe Bar. That is going to be an extreme nightmare. Not only if there's a hazmat issue or something happens, but even just daily life. I think there's a type 6 and type 3 that sits in our fire station. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that. But if there's any type of traffic out there, getting emergency egress out can be very, very difficult. So I'm hoping that the EIR does address that in a comprehensive manner. The other thing I want to go ahead and make sure I highlight is, because of the high density, it's 353 units, 140 high density, 204 single family, very low income or low income, there possibly could be some access and functional needs people who live here. That possesses another impact of people trying to get out, and that can be a major problem too as well. And I hope the EIR addresses that. The second component of what I'd like to go ahead and bring up as a concern that I hope the EIR addresses is, again, with the public utility side, is the impact on our schools. I want to shout out to Erica Sloan and our LUSD and Al, who does a great job in doing the preparation for the kids coming in our schools. My kids go to HCP, and I know that they have been looking forward in what's coming down the line. One of the things I think for me, especially in the industry that I am, is I look at threats. If for some reason there's an active shooter scenario, either Delaware or one of these schools, and there's an extra 200 or 300 kids at each school, and law enforcement or fire has a problem getting there, that can be a real issue. And I hope the EIR addresses the impacts of schools in that realm as well. And I'm sure there's going to be other folks coming up here and postulating about other issues that can be impact schools.
Use your mic a little bit more.
I'm as close as I can be. If I do it, I'm going to blow people out, ma'am. The next component is water, wastewater, and utility services. It is my understanding that there's 2 pump houses, or 2 pumps for water treatment. One of them is on the foothill side, which is at capacity, or going to be at capacity, and another one that's going to be built at Ophir. And Placer County Water Association do a great job at associating and kind of dealing with some of the capacities. And I know the EIR will probably address that, and the town will probably reach out to Placer County Water too as well. But one of the concerns I have that I hope the EIR addresses is with the, and forgive me, it's the Brickman 5,000 unit or 5,000 homes across the top of Sierra College. With the foothills being at capacity and Ophir not even being built yet, and with all these micro communities happening, I hope the EIR addresses that there could be an issue and impact on water treatment, especially when it comes to how this Ophir Hill plant might be impacted with just not this community but other communities. So I hope that brings out too. I know it was spoken to a while back in one of your slides about energy. I know as we move away from petroleum and we kind of move more to energy resiliency, I think the California ISOs, independent service officers, do a great job at moving energy around. But one of the things is I hope the EI addresses is how this community is going to impact, or how Title 24 is going to impact this community as far as energy resiliency. And again, my ignorance on this is I still have a lot to learn on it, but there's a component to solar and some other energy resiliency. So we put more communities on the grid, that does put a lot of strain on that. So I hope the EIR addresses that too as well. At this point, I do have some questions from any corporation, but I think you answered them too as well. I think I'm going to stand by and see if there's some public comment and some things that come out with the rest of the commissioners that answer my questions. And for that, I'll hand over my time. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Nate. Jean, you want to, let's go this way.
Okay. And my apologies for tardiness. I somehow thought we were at the Blue Goose and zapped around and got back 3 minutes late. Sorry.
So excused.
I have a number of concerns and requests. One is regarding the bridge that will be on Library Drive extending over the wetlands. And I would really like you to check with Army Corps of Engineers on whether that bridge placement has their approval. I could be wrong, but my understanding from the original village application was that they also had planned to have a bridge across the middle of the wetlands, much like this one, and that Army Corps really wanted them to move it down to the freeway, basically the Dock Barnes area, so that the wetlands were, that whole habitat was not basically kind of, yes, animals, plants, things can go under the bridge, but to keep that area as one whole habitat and not split up in the middle by the bridge. So if you could check into that and see if Army Corps has approved this new site, and if not, needs to be looked into. Secondly, I have a serious concern about some of the concession requests, especially to not have to mitigate for the trees. Something over 1,700 trees to be removed, of which 1,650 are oaks. Our tree ordinance is not just so that we can collect money for trees cut down. It was written so that we could preserve our native oaks in this particular area and not just grow trees or just collect funds to do something with. It was the intent, if you were to look at our tree ordinance, the intent of it is to preserve oak woodlands, to preserve oak trees. And so it's a matter of habitat. A single oak tree is not that much of a habitat. What you need is habitat that has all the other things that go along with it, with the oaks. And so we need to have space for that. How that would be done, you might have different recommendations, but for instance, if they were to be required to purchase some land within the town that has native oaks and could be used to plant more native oaks, that would give us at least preserving oak habitat and not simply collecting money and really not being able to keep the native oaks that we would like to. And from my perspective, to just say, well, they can buy some oak someplace 20, 30, 50 miles away, as was once projected for another project, that really does not preserve our native local habitat. And so I really would like that looked into, and I am not at all in favor of a concession that says don't have to mitigate at all. I also, under air quality, it's not usual to include heat island effect. Usually air quality has to do with the different gases that are in the air, what kind of pollutants are in the air. But I think, as we all saw with last summer and the effects of climate change, air temperature is a serious matter. And as we increase our air temperature here due to climate change, we need to be even more aware of heat island effect, which, for those who are not aware of that, that's when you take away grasslands, trees, shrubs, things that are relatively cooler and are providing cooling to the atmosphere through transevaporation. When you take all that kind of thing away and put in instead pavement, buildings, roofs, the kinds of things that absorb heat and therefore concentrate the heat in those developed areas, that's called a heat island. And so I would like you to look into heat island effect and what kinds of things can be done to reduce that, such as trees, materials, other kinds of things. This is not a new issue. This has been being looked at for decades now. So I would like heat island effect looked into, whether you can put it under air quality or something else. I'm opposed to the land dedication concession, that they wouldn't have to give us any land for parks or other things that they're supposed to under our regulations, because we need those parks, we need those open spaces, we need those here. If you're going to bring the people in who need those things, they need those things in the area that they live, not have to go to some park some distance away, or the town have to count something that doesn't really belong as a park. In that regard, the wetlands area is prohibited from public use, at least at last time that I knew, by Army Corps of Engineers. And even the trail that was going to be put through by the village had to be post and cabled, marked off, no public access to stay, could only go on the trail. So from my perspective, that's not an open space park. We have a park requirement of 5 acres per 1,000 requirement, 1,000 population, and that is 5 acres of active park, things with equipment, that sort of thing, grass, and 5 acres of open space kind of park. And that kind of park needs to be public park. Just because it's roped off with post and cable and the public can't go there, in my opinion, that should not be counted as part of the parkland. Just because the developer can't use it doesn't mean that they should shunt it off to us and call it a park when it isn't. As Nate and I'm sure many have considered, I do have a lot of traffic concerns, particularly putting so much traffic, almost all except for the part that goes on to King Road. The vast majority of the traffic of this whole project is onto Library Drive, which was never designed or intended for that kind of hundreds of households using it. And so where is this going to empty? It's going to empty right onto Horseshoe Bar, which is already impacted at busy times. Both Horseshoe Bar and Taylor Road have obvious traffic congestion. So it really needs to be looked at as a safety issue. How safe is this, cramming all those cars and dumping them basically onto Horseshoe Bar at that point? I have concerns about the intersection at Webb. Again, people that try to get out of the subdivision by the Webb, going onto Webb to get out, and particularly, I suppose, would be going the other block, one more, to get to Taylor Road. That's only just a stone's throw above the major intersection of Horseshoe Bar and Taylor. And so is there really room for that kind of traffic pouring into there? I don't think that's a very safe thing to do. And the other consideration that when I looked at the map, if people decide instead that they will turn right and go up Laird, wind through the Day Avenue track to get to King Road, then we are putting this subdivision's traffic onto the subdivision of the Day tract and that area. In that case, those people already, for those who come to these meetings, there have been numerous complaints about how the narrow road up there is already congested and sometimes difficult with the vehicles parked for people even to pass at times. So we should not be putting our new subdivision traffic up into that subdivision. I think that's also a safety issue. As I looked at the lots around that Webb opening, frankly, I think it would be better if that is just made an EV emergency exit for the subdivision, should it need evacuation, so that there's an additional place to get out, and I would not put traffic actually going through there on a regular daily basis. I have a concern about the sidewalks. Our regulations call for sidewalks on both sides of the street. This, like many other of the new subdivisions, and yes, I've been to some of them and I see it, have sidewalks only on one side of the street. Given that these are going to be relatively narrow streets, given the number of children that may be using these streets, the number of children that are going to be using them to get to the library, to the park behind the library, to get to school, and especially if they have to be crossing Library Drive, which has the bulk of the traffic from the subdivision, I really think that we need to hold them to the sidewalks on both sides of the street for safety. The sewer has been mentioned. I would like you to confirm with PCWA that that 6-inch line at Library Drive is actually still available for this subdivision. The 10-inch line is also mentioned, but I don't know if the 6-inch line actually is. We have the new sewer line that crosses the Turtle Island, crosses the freeway, crosses Turtle Island, goes down Diaz Lane on the other side of the freeway. And we needed to get that put in because we had no capacity left in our existing sewer lines, to the point that the mixed-use subdivision over on Taylor Road had to be put off for years because SPMUD had to deny them a will serve permit because they said, we have no more capacity. It was given either to Newcastle or Penryn, which did have very serious matters, but what we thought we had here, we no longer had, and that's why the new sewer line has been put in. And I know that there is a 6-inch. It was put in at the library. It was put in when Earl Gates sold the property to the town to the county for the library site for a small amount, but he had to put in all that infrastructure in the road. But I would like you to check and make sure so that it's not in reports as something that's usable or that the project thinks they can use. I have concerns about the schools. The initial report assumes that those kids are all going to be able to go to Loomis Grammar, and I really think you need to check with the school district and see what they're projecting on that, because they get them to show you their map of their capacity and the school capacity and expected number of kids, and they're going to be juggling things pretty carefully in the next couple of years. So they can't just assume that all those kids are going to be able to go to Loomis Grammar unless you're planning to eject a whole lot of kids that are already still there. I'm very concerned about the parking situation. I looked at the drawings of the roadway configurations, and except for a very small part up where Day Avenue is the cutoff, the emergency exit at Day Avenue, that street is wide enough for 4 lanes. In other words, two parking lanes and 2 driving lanes. The entire rest of the subdivision, except for in front of the library, is only allowing for 2 lanes, no parking on either side of the street. And I think that is frankly ridiculous to expect that an entire subdivision with all these individual houses has no street parking whatsoever any place. And one place, page 44, mentions a proposed parking lot, but I couldn't find it. Maybe it's there and I didn't find it. But if there is a proposed parking lot, What does it look like? Is it adequate? Does it fit where it needs to be? And I think if anybody thinks about having hundreds of homes with absolutely no on-street parking, it means that where does a delivery truck go? They have to stop in the middle of the roadway. Where do guests go? Where are people with, actually here we have a lot of people that do have 3 vehicles, maybe 2 adults and maybe a teen has a car, a truck here. Trucks are pretty common. And just to assume that we don't need in this entire subdivision any parking, I think is a ridiculous notion, and we can't tolerate that. I think we need to, in general, adhere to our road standards. Lots of concessions are going to be requested. That doesn't mean that for public safety we should just throw them away. I think it's one thing to have a lot of people here, but we need to prepare adequately for it so that we do have safety and we do have, for instance, a fire. If a fire truck needs to get in and we don't have any place for them to park except the middle of the road, that is not a very safe thing. And the majority of the fire calls here are not for fires. It's 80-some% are for medical emergencies. If we have so much congestion, no place for the fire truck to park, that is not safe for the person needing medical assistance, and it's not safe for the drivers that have to get around on the roads. The same goes for if a police call were to be needed. So I will probably send in some written comments on these things and maybe some others by Friday. And I would encourage anybody in the audience to take advantage of that. Turn your notes in tonight on the form. But if you have other things, do send it in by Friday afternoon, and then it can be included, and they'll have a little more time to look over what you wanted to say. I do want to thank you for the initial study and the format. It was comprehensive, thorough. It was easy to read through, and I do appreciate the way that you did it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Linda?
A lot of the things that were said have already been said, but there are a couple things that are, top of mind for me. Again, the traffic patterns. The main ones that I would like looked at are by Boynton, where they come off, go into this little subdivision right there off of King. Mainly because Del Oro's parking lot is back in that area, and just that King Road is very congested during school going and coming from activities, and that's something I'd like looked into. Another area was talked about, and that was Library Drive, everyone getting on Horseshoe Bar right there. Looking at it, I'm concerned about the safety. Like Jean said, the parking, there's no way that people can park on the side of the road, and that's going to be very difficult for emergency vehicles. And then Nate was talking about if there was something where we needed to evacuate people very quickly. I just see a problem with that. So, what are the recourses for a quick evacuation, even though we're right next to the freeway? If all these homes are trying to leave at the same time coming out, it'd be very, very difficult. And I just think it could be a really bad situation. I know before in other projects, the fire department and the police come in and they say, we can't turn our vehicles around unless it's so certain, feet across or whatever it is, because those are big vehicles. And so they would, I'm sure, have to come in and look at the sides of the roads to make sure that they're safe, that they can come in and exit without, disturbing what's happening there. The safety for the children, if they're walking, especially to school. I know it will be an issue whether these kids will be allowed to go to Loomis Grammar where they can walk there, or, Del Oro. They have a lot of inter-district transfers. And a lot of times in communities, they assume that they'll go to the neighborhood school and then there's no room. And that's something that I would like looked into carefully, that there would be room for these additional students that live in our community, pay the taxes, support the community things here. I'm concerned about the parks. I think parks are very needed. A lot of people have pets, maybe a dog park, or, a small park for children to play at with grass and things like that, or big enough to have an extra soccer field. We need soccer fields really bad in this area. But also those that just like to walk into nature. I know Jean discussed a little bit about that area that you can't go into, but maybe on the outskirts or somewhere in the area there could be benches where people could sit and rest from their walk, or just sit and watch nature and be with their kids or their dog or whatever. I think it would really help. It really helped me to understand the SB 330 whole process, and to realize that this is a new law that went into effect, and we're all learning about this new law and things we can and cannot do to mitigate this process or stop this process. And I don't want people to accuse us of trying to push something through that the town doesn't want, because we're here to try to make something good out of something that maybe we wouldn't have wanted in the first place, but because of the new laws, it's going to happen. And unless, because I don't see how it can't. But I think it's good to know too that we do not pay for the EIR project. A lot of people are concerned about the money that is being spent in the town. Our town is a very small town. We don't have a lot of money, but the general contractor that wants to do this project, they're the ones that will be paying for this EIR, not the town. And so that made me feel better about it, because I know it's a huge project and you've got a lot on your hands to do it, and you're doing a great job. And I want to thank the staff for educating me personally, and anyone else. They're always have been open, and they're open to, if you have questions. I really appreciate the staff, and I really appreciate you that are here tonight, because it takes courage to come with concerns. And the more that we work together as a community to find out what your concerns are for the EIR tonight, it'll be a better EIR project, and we can make it a better project. And I leave it back to you.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, so I do have some comments. I have a couple questions of Rod. I do want to just mention early on here, I do see some familiar faces out there. There's some familiar faces back here. I think some of us might have some PTSD from the last time we went through a proposal back for this location. I do want to set the expectation, though, that the playing field is much different this time around, all right? There was a lot of comment back in the day that if you just don't like it, then nothing will ever happen. And I think a lot of people were fooled into believing that if they didn't support it, they didn't like it, then nothing would ever happen. That turned out to be very wrong. And so here we are again. This is not going to happen again. If we don't like it and there's things about this project that we don't like, the end result is not going to be it doesn't happen. So I hope that people can grasp that reality, because that is the reality of the current situation, okay? So concerns. For me, the biggest thing is the traffic, all right? And you hear people, their biggest concern oftentimes with where the town is, with the traffic situation is, what's the plan? How do we fix this? And the truth is we have a plan, all right? It's called the circulation plan. That has been on the books for many years. It's sitting on the shelves and in Town Hall. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to create the circulation plan. And basically what that is a way to mitigate traffic in the town. And I think that there's probably not anybody here tonight that believes we don't have a traffic problem. The problem isn't the plan or the lack thereof. The problem is the cost to build out the traffic circulation plan. And this project falls short of that. And I want to focus the EIR on that very sensitive issue because it's only going to get worse when you add 355 units as proposed. So that would be my top priority to see how this could be properly mitigated with the limited resources that this proposal has in comparison to previous proposals. Schools, very concerned about schools. I would ask, I guess this would be the question of Rod. Rod, can you come to the podium, please? So that we do have an understanding publicly, what is the proposed mitigation of the schools for school impact? Has that been identified yet?
Yeah, so we haven't gotten into the depths of the analysis yet, but standard mitigation statewide is SB 50 fees for school impacts. But again, we haven't really gotten into the analysis. We will reach out to the school districts, get their capacity, and then we'll be comparing student generation rates, what's the increase in students associated with this project compared to capacity, and then have a discussion on potential impacts to the school from there.
Do we have any idea? Okay, so the school hasn't provided yet what the potential impacts are. Is that what you're saying?
We haven't had the back and forth with the school district.
Okay, so
we're very early in the process.
Yeah. So I would like the EIR to focus on impacts to the schools.
Of course.
Let's see, in relation to that, somewhat in relation to that is the pedestrian traffic and how the project accommodates pedestrian traffic. And one thing that I think was one of the, I'm going to go back and forth with the previous proposal that people had reviewed with the Village project, because there were some things that we negotiated in that project that turned out to make it a better project. But we had created a connection with the project to Rayleigh's. The way that it's laid out right now is that that people walking have to go all the way around to the project to get to Rayleigh's, and it really takes away the incentive for people to walk to that shopping center. And I don't think it would take much. Rayleigh's in the previous proposal was very cooperative and wanted to see a connection with the project directly. That would be on the map. That would be, I believe, Library Drive. There would be some pedestrian connection there to that area, and I think that would help move people around. It would get people out of their house, hopefully. So I would like to focus on pedestrian mobility. We want to make it this project as mobile friendly to foot traffic as possible. I agree with Jean's comments about the sidewalks, and I do believe it is important to meet the sidewalk requirements of the town, and so I would be interested to see how that is all proposed more specifically in the EIR. I have another question for you, Rod. So the parks and open space, how is that proposed right now? Does the open space, is it proposed that some of the open space be credited towards park space?
Yeah, we would look toward the town's code for what would count as parks. So yeah, we would look to code.
Because they're two different things in our general plan, right? You have open space and you have parks, and so I'd like to focus our attention on the parks versus open space. I'd like to focus on the well, let me put it this way. So what they're proposing is that they meet the parking requirement. So as Gene pointed out, it looks like there's no on-street parking as proposed. I'm not sure that that's something that the town is going to be able to win on. The previous project had over 80. You could fact check me. I believe at the end, the very end product was that we had 80 additional parking spots in the previous project, and above and beyond the minimum that was required. So I don't know how you focus your attention on that. What we wanted to avoid is seeing a bunch of traffic or cars parked on the street, or minimize that, right? I mean, I don't think that you can totally get rid of all cars parked on the streets, but we wanted to minimize that look, and so I don't know what section you would focus that in the on that in the EIR, but
Yeah, so CEQA doesn't actually have a parking question that we specifically are to address.
Okay.
Parking's typically handled through the other aspects of the planning process. It's still addressed, but not necessarily as an environmental impact. Where it would come into play for us are some of the emergency vehicle access issues or safety issues related to circulation.
Okay.
And that's where we would address indirectly the parking concern, I think, that you have.
okay. And I do want to mirror back to traffic, Nate's comments about safety and egress and emergency services and how we move people in the event of an emergency, and certainly having Boyington, that connection would make all the difference, I believe. So I think that should again be a large focus of the EIR. So that's the extent of my comments at this point. We are going to open it up to public comment, and let me just set the ground rules for public comment. This is not Q&A. What we hope to get out of this is for the public to bring their comments as statements. These aren't clarifying moments that we're going to ask staff to clarify on. This is the moment to provide comment on the environmental impacts and the focus that you'd like to, again, see the EIR reflect. We have people taking notes, and it's recorded, and we are going to take, the way this does work is the draft EIR will take all of your comments, and if you list your name will be listed as a comment maker. And so this is part of the process. We want to hear from you, and please tell us what and how you want to focus, what you'd like to see focused on the EIR. So at this point, we're going to leave it, bring it open to the public, and 3 minutes per speaker. And with that, let's do that.
Hello, good evening. My name is Peter F. Stathiou. I am an assistant superintendent for Placer Union High School District. I've been in that position for 7 years, previously 9 years as the principal at Placer High School, so don't hold that against me. I just wanted to come and say I did submit a letter for written comments, and so that's for you guys to have, and to make a few statements. One, have been working collaboratively, did I pronounce that correctly? Yes, with Loomis in regards to traffic. We spent our own money on a traffic study several years ago in conjunction with the town as well to figure out traffic flow so we could help alleviate some pressure off of Taylor. We meet, I think I want to say every 2 months. I know that City Manager West comes to those meetings at Loomis in regards to traffic and doing our best to help alleviate some of that coming into Del Oro. Also want the commission to know we do have room at Del Oro for the 30 or 50 kids that may show up, and also planning on what happens with Bickford and some other developments as well. a different situation than the elementary school district is in. We've mentioned this before when they had the previous project going in. We have a little over 250 to 275 students who come from inter-district. Obviously, what would happen is they would get pushed out eventually if that were to happen and satisfy our own enrollments. Obviously, we like to take as many kids as possible, but there is a threshold at what that point would happen. We would not reach that capacity for 10 to 15 years. Who knows? We don't know how long it takes Bickford to build out, whether the other one at Cressley gets built. I just know with this one, Delaware has the capacity to handle those students coming in to answer that question. The information is on the note there, our superintendent and so forth. You feel free to reach out to myself if you have any questions regarding anything with the district and Delaware High School on this project. But lastly, not that I'm speaking for the district, everything we talk about, development and so forth, obviously we would be a big supporter of a road going in that connects Horseshoe Bar Road to Boyington to help with traffic, that students coming to and from the school. The way the plan is proposed right now, I don't know how we'd be able to help without that pathway. When we spoke to the villages, that was our big thing for us. So we would be a big proponent, a supporter of that road, connecting both those things to help with traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Russell Laird. I live at 6364 David Avenue. It's very close to the freeway, kind of in the middle of the development. And my comment with regards to the EIR is about noise. Right now, there's a whole bunch of trees and bushes between those houses and the freeway, which blocks all the vision of the freeway and most of the noise. But it's proposed on page 16 of the plans to cut down all of the trees and bushes between those houses and the freeway. And there's no sound barrier going up back at that location because they're cutting them all down for a drainage basin. A lot of sound walls are going up, but at that location they're not, so it's just going to let all the sound come up from the freeway and the vision, which is going to not be good for those houses. And that's not to mention with all those trees being cut down, the animals. I got raccoons and squirrels and birds and all kinds of stuff living back there. That's all I'd like to bring up for now.
Thank you.
Did you guys put a light up here for me? Or you want to keep me in the dark? I'm Russ Kelly. I live at 4246 Barton Road. I probably served on every commission that the town has had, including the Placer County Parks Commission for 20 years, Placer Mosquito Vector Control District for about 20 years. I have a lot of experience with EIRs when I served on the council. I think so far we're doing a good job. One of the biggest concerns that I have relates to the traffic. And we have Paradise, we have Maui, we have Antelope locally. We had our own fire here in 2002 and 1917. And we need to be concerned about the access on how we get there to take care of that sort of thing. With that, I look at I also served on the fire department. I recognize that we need that access. And when you're looking at houses that have 2 and 3 cars, the lots are not wide enough to be parking those cars. So what we need to do is have a serious look at that. Also, the wetlands and open space, we need to look to the mosquito district to get some guidance. Is there anything we can do to mitigate some of that? Seeing how that the largest infestation in Placer County started in Penryn. So we're very close to that. And the feeds that we have from our creek beds and stuff down there contribute to that sort of thing. So that needs to be looked at. Let's see. I don't want to change anything. I'm not here to change anything. I'm just want to make sure we take a good look at it. Let's see here. I got too big of a list here. Public services, I think the sewer and water and all those concerns that you've all had are critical. And I look to all you for the guidance. We've been here before. Lots of times. For the same reasons. We just want to make sure that our community is addressed for the community that we are, not what somebody else wants it to be. So I think that's critical. And I will submit some other thing online for future reference. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ.
Hi, I'm Linda Williams. I live at 5150 King Road here in Loomis. And I would like to open with that I am in support of additional housing. I don't want that to cloud anything, but it's unfortunate that we lost what we were creating with our previous project. But we are here, and there's no way to get out of this because 3:30 is going to cause us to make a decision whether we want to or not, and I realize that. So I'm here to help you in any way I can. But I do have similar concerns as to what you all have suggested. Impacts in our schools, our grammar schools, just the children walking to schools with the additional traffic has a real safety concern for me. Our utilities, our impact on our low-income family. I'm thrilled that some of this is going to be dedicated to low-income housing, and but with that comes other social service needs, and including public transportation. And I don't think that we are poised for proper public transportation to help these families. I have a concern for the lack of parking, because parking is going to happen no matter what. And who's going to enforce this? But sometimes when we have to do a call out, they're not going to want to always call out to somebody's parking in my front yard. But it's going to turn out that way, and we just don't have the support or the capacity, I think, to. Or maybe it's a community service officer. I'm not sure, but I think that we need to ask and get involved with our public safety entities as it relates to these mitigations, the traffic areas where they're not supposed to be parking, because they're going to park there. Concessions that they're asking for, it's incredible to me. One is going 3 stories. We already have to be good neighbors to one another. We saw the contentious process that took place during the village, and I don't want to go through that again. I love my town and the people that I live with, but a 3-story concession is only going to hurt the people behind that subdivision and create ill will. Cluster housing in and of itself causes all kinds of problems with first responders. Our first responders aren't going to be able to get in and out of there like they said, and I think Commissioner Wilson pointed it out. We can't even turn around our fire trucks in some of the spaces that we have now, and why would we build something that can't support that? I have evacuated from 3 places during emergencies. I lived through the bomb scare in Roseville and evacuated from that. We don't have proper egress for these situations between I-80, the rail tracks, and the gas line right here. You know, it's more of a win, not that we haven't had it. Thank you.
Thank you.
William Quinville, 6280 Horseshoe Bar Road. And yes, I'm the villain that stopped the village project. I'm terribly sorry. It was a bad project then, and this project is not any better. I am going to point out, somebody touched on the roads. That was a very good point, because not having on-street parking and having some parking structure somewhere, to be determined, I assume, violates ADA. There's no access. So how does someone go to someone's home and go there if they're disabled? Are you going to have a shuttle that comes from the parking lot to take them to the home? This is craziness. You can't give these people any concessions. Hold them to the standards. That was the whole point. Hold them to the standards. Don't give them anything. because this is wrong. This is not, you want to have high density. I've been in city and county government working with projects since 1983 when I did the GS project for the city of Danville. High density is meant to be along light rail or some corridor where you have access. You're going to dump it behind Raley's. They have nothing back there. They're all going to come out on Library Drive. Wow, that's going to be really good. And like I said, there's probably going to be a mix of disabled people in there. They're not going to have access to anything. They're just going to be stuck back there. This is just wrong. I'm just saying, it was wrong. But there are serious issues with the EIR with regards to the wetlands, because I went through that process in the last project, and I've worked with the Army Corps of Engineers in Morgan Hill to deal with wetland mitigation, and they don't budge. So I don't see this as a starter. I don't care what SB 330 says. Prior to that, the town, a 2/3 majority voted, we don't want this in our town. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I know we need more housing. It's just an issue that we're going to have to deal with. But Gene brought up a lot of good things that I didn't know about because I didn't read the whole report. And Gene, thank you. For one, the roads have no sidewalks. I mean, if the road's only made for 2 cars, been in construction for over 40 years, that means that the guy's probably building an extra 60 or 70 homes. If the streets are narrower, he could put more lots. We need to think of responsible building. And the EIR report, it has every consideration except the public. It has no public impact. And it says tree removal. I've been here for 23 years. When I cut down one tree in my house, it was $100 an inch. I don't know where that law went, but I think we should bring that law back because it's not fair that these developers are running this town and telling us what to do. And they're getting enough concessions from the state of California that I don't think we should give them any concessions. And I think if the guy's really serious about the project, he should do all the infrastructure first, like sewer and water. And like Gene was saying, that new 6-inch sewer line, think about how big 6 inches are. That's not going to hold 300 houses or whatever they're going to do there with the units. And anything over 2 stories isn't fair to the people of Loomis who's lived here for years. I think the impact report should do a lot more for the people instead of the impact report for the builder. Because it always seems like the builder, the impact report always goes to the builder side instead of the town side. You're going to add 800 people to a town that has 6,000 people. In 24 years I've been here, this town has grown 2,000 people. And to shove 800 more people and 300 more houses into that little bit of a land isn't fair for the people that already live here. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Randy Green. I live in Del Mar. I'd like to see the EIR also represent the, get my glasses here, kind of wrote some notes, the Wildland Protection Act. And also like to find out what your program is going to be for any project waste being 100% recyclable. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. Erica Sloan, Superintendent for Loomis Union School District. I appreciate our high school getting up and sharing, but I did want to say that we are in a different situation where all of our schools are near or at capacity, and that we will be submitting a thorough comment before Friday, and we look forward, as Loomis Union School District, with collaborating with everyone on the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
My name is Rich Gauthier. I live at 6080 Helen's Court. Along with everybody else here, I'm very worried about the traffic there. I see our kids walking down to Rayleigh's and now Starbucks, and it's more dangerous to be a pedestrian than it is to ride a motorcycle. And it's on my mind a lot with how many cars will be coming through, because sometimes it's even hard to get into the library as it is right now, let alone add more cars trying to get out of the library. It's a large concern. Some of the structures that have been put up for possible historical site, I would like to have some local historians be a part of that. An example might be the Placer County Historical Society. There's a perennial creek that flows to Secret Ravine. Concerned that the normal flow would be impeded for the salmon run. Local salmon groups have worked with Nevada Irrigation District to improve Auburn Ravine. I'd like to see someone with this experience review the project. And lastly, the noise. With 3 stories right on the freeway, I'd like to have some sort of study done, not for the people, also for the people that live here now, but for the people that possibly might be living. There's special buildings regulations for people that live next to airports and such. So I'd like to have that put in there also. Thank you.
Thank you. Rod, is a noise study included? Okay. Thank you. Is it a single noise study, or is there multiple noise studies?
There's one noise study, but it addresses full build out and the entirety of the project.
Okay, because depending on the location of the project, the noises are obviously different. So, okay, thank you.
Hi, Tricia Art. I live at 3435 Rachel Court. So we have a single egress onto Taylor, and for the village project, they used statistics saying that, it's a long time ago, so I don't remember specifically what statistics were used for trips to the high school, but I think it was something like 1.5. My next door neighbor, who could easily have walked to Del Oro, made 4 trips. School in the morning, back, after school activities, back every single day. So I would like some transparency on where you get the statistics for making those decisions. Are they based on our local usage? Are they based on statewide? I think people in our community may drive more than your average Californian. So I don't know if we can affect what studies are used, or if we can use local studies. Same goes for the parking. Rachel Court, narrow roads. I don't know, 6, 7, 8 pickup trucks, including my own, on the road. We have 3 cars because we have 3 adults living in our home. So we wouldn't even, well, we can park our cars, 1 in the garage and 2 on our driveway. But we don't usually, if we can get by with it. So I think other people would do the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Sean Giorgino. I live at 3435 Rachel Court. And my concern, as I'm sure it sounds like most people's concern is traffic. Now, as the previous person mentioned, you can see the amount of traffic that we get during school hours going and coming from school. And I feel like one solution which many cities across America, many cities across the world have implemented is dedicated bike lanes. Loomis does have bike lanes. I use them pretty often, but they are insufficient. They are simply painted. There's no protection. There's no sort of barrier to prevent tragic accidents from happening, which many of you may be familiar with the treasurer who recently died in such an accident. So to help prevent such tragedies from happening again, I would like the new project to include some sort of dedicated bike lane for security. This also helps alleviate, maybe not completely solve the traffic issue, but if several students or children can walk or bike to school instead of driving, that would probably at least help reduce the traffic, although not completely eliminate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other comments from the public? Come forward.
Yes.
Hi there.
Hi. My name is Desiree Chase, and I live at 6245 Arcadia Avenue. And I just want to bring up a couple things. I agree with almost everything you guys are saying. Traffic is key in our town because it turns to a parking lot many hours of the day. So another thing is, I don't know if anybody's really talking about it, but Loomis is not really built for low to no income. We don't have the infrastructure for like people that don't have cars. Our schools don't really have busing, so those kids are out walking. And I don't know if it's being looked at, and I don't know what the requirement is. That's hoping something that can be addressed would be for the increase of people, do we have the increase of resources? Being fire, police, people that help clean the drains in the town. They're building a retention pond. Is that actually adequate? I know majority of our retention ponds in our town currently are not very adequate. Drainage is a huge issue, and you guys do a great job on manning that, and I appreciate that, but it's gonna continue to be a struggle because that water has to all go into a system, and that's gonna eventually become taxed. Just like our sewer, just like everything. So are we actually prepared for this amount of people? And we have the Bickford project coming in. I know that's a different infrastructure a little bit, but that comes into our schooling, and more traffic coming over the hill, and just more people in general. So those people are coming into town, and then what are they, they're here. So using our library, using our public bathrooms, our parks. So just things that we have to consider if we are going to continue to grow, which I know we have to. So just do it smart, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we have Christy say what low income is?
Christy, can you define low, the low income thresholds for us?
Sure. And just there's a distinction between what low income is and then at-risk housing. So at-risk housing is for homeless persons or people in need of additional services. Low income is housing that would be affordable to people making these incomes. So for example, in Placer County, the what's considered low income is an individual making at or less than $60,000 a year. For a family of four, that would be $85,750 a year. So we're looking at people making those wages or less who would be considered eligible for affordable housing.
Okay, so how does affordable housing relate to this project? I think this is probably a good time to bring this up and better understand that. So is affordable housing proposed in this project so far?
So there is an affordable housing component. If you look at the town's adopted housing element, we do identify this site as a site that would be able to accommodate our regional housing needs allocation.
Okay, to clarify, to add to Christy's comments, affordable housing is just not a generic word. It's not a generic term. It's actually a legal term, and the state has use that in law to define certain income levels for housing. So, it oftentimes is used informally. Affordable housing might mean something to anybody, something different to everybody, but there is a technical definition behind affordable housing. And so because can you just connect the dots here? So because this is an SB 330 proposed project and SB 330 requires affordable housing, where's the connection there?
SB 330 refers to any project that involves residential, any housing, or mixed use, for example.
Okay.
Where affordability comes into play is in terms of the request for any bonuses, concessions, waivers, things like that. The affordability plays that role in establishing how many concessions or incentives can be asked for.
Okay, so sorry, I'm a little stubborn sometimes. So it doesn't, to qualify as a SB 330 project, it doesn't have to have an affordable housing component? Is that a true statement?
In our case, because our housing element identifies this area for meeting our regional housing needs allocation, that then plays into that. So that would be a town policy for having, meeting our RENA allocation. So this site in particular, although SB 330 generally doesn't require that to be compliant with SB 330 in the general plan, this project then has that affordability component.
Got it. Okay.
And just to add a little bit of extra clarification.
Please.
The state has a whole separate set of statutes dealing with density bonuses and concessions that come into play when affordable housing is proposed the way Christy was saying. So SB 330 is one set of rules that we have to play by, and because affordable units are being proposed here, that's why we have that whole separate category of concessions, waivers, incentives that we also have to follow. But that's a separate set of state statutes from the SB 330 rules that we're also dealing with.
Got it. Thank you. But the rules. Okay. She did define low income. I'm sorry.
Because there's no income is also a category, correct?
No income is not being proposed.
In this project. Okay. I misunderstood. Thank you.
Okay.
I do have.
Nate, hang on.
There is someone on.
Okay, we're not going to close out yet. Nate, can you hold? Let's keep it open for public comment right now. Is there anyone else here in the room in the chambers that has comment to provide? Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Tom Blackburn. I'm a 34-year resident of the Loomis Basin. I live at 3025 Humphrey Road. Having been in this position before, speaking in a situation like this, one of the things that has always been a major concern of mine is what happens when we begin the process of negotiations with the developers. I understand the relationship between the number of units necessary to make a reasonable profit on a project. But this project, especially hearing what I've heard tonight, seems to be pushing the concessions to the side in favor of, I'm sorry, let me state that again. People seem to be concerned about concessions that could be made, and I would like to propose to the developer and to the project that good faith could be demonstrated highly by a willingness to move the number of units to a slightly lower number to accomplish some of these things. I hope that's something that will happen as the process continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comments from those here in the chamber?
My name is Josh Kitchigurney, local Loomis resident too.
wasn't planning on speaking, but I think most of the council here kind of spoke on all the things that are important to my wife and I. We moved here for safety, for the community, for the schools, and the potential for exacerbating the school wait lists, especially having a young child. And I think that's something I hope that the ER really addresses. The traffic, obviously, is a huge component to this. Anybody that lives in the subdivision just over the train tracks here knows it takes me sometimes 8 to 10 minutes just to hit Highway 80 in school traffic. It's not including the train, getting stopped for the train. So I think the traffic, the school wait lists, and gosh, I'm drawing a blank here. Those are the two really big ones for us. So thank you guys for everything that you do, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's go to the Zoom. Any hands up, Sarah? Let's start at the top. Pam, are you ready? Okay. I don't see any hands raised. Are there?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Oh, there you are. Okay, fire away.
Thank you. I looked at, on my laptop, the 70 plus pages, and I'm concerned about there's a lot of X's on the potentially significant impact. So there's a lot of that I have concerns with. I also have concerns with the infrastructure and the roads and some, I don't know if that was Gene that brought up Library Drive, but I was actually at the library today, and it's just one road in and one road out. And then another thing is about having all those trees removed, because the trees and stuff provide I believe the oxygen in the air, helps with global warming, etc. So I would just like, oops, sorry, my cell phone just went off. I just like to bring up the infrastructure. Also, the parking. The previous project was the village, and one of the things I objected to was the parking on the street and the alleyways. The alleyways were never for Loomis in the first place. I'm so glad to see that I could see the clock ticking down. So I've lived here, coming up on 39 years. And, I love this town, and the traffic just coming from the Raley's grocery store into the town, Taylor Road, is already bad. I do volunteer work for 2 organizations, and I either leave before the high school gets out, or I leave an hour later after the high school gets out. So I was subbing yesterday, and I literally left early to avoid the traffic on Taylor Road. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak and not be there in person. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? There might be a slight delay, so we'll keep it open for a few seconds here.
Hey, Google, turn off the lights.
I saw Miguel Yukovic raise his hand, but then it went away.
Okay.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Hello? Okay, thanks. My first comment is I'm a little bit confused about SB 330. In reading it, said that the project has to follow the general plan and the zoning ordinances.
Hey, Google, turn off the lights.
Now, it's been stated that if low-income housing is provided, then concessions can be required by the developer. It was confusing when the planning director kind of said, yes, this is going to have low income housing, and then kind of backtracked. Is this having low income housing that will be sold? The units that are high density behind Rayleigh's, they were going to be market value. They weren't going to be low income. So I know we're not supposed to ask questions, but if they're having low income housing, then they're entitled to the concessions. If they're not providing low income housing, then they have to follow the general plan and the zoning ordinance in the town of Loomis. My other concern is in the park and recreation to provide, hope the EIR addresses the fact of the social needs of the residents of that community. Can those needs be met by the proposed 1 acre and a quarter acre parks that are being in there? Do they meet the recreational needs of the community? So those are my comments, and I hope that they're addressed in the EIR. Thank you.
Keeping it open on Zoom. Any other hands there?
Not that I see.
Okay, we're going to give it another 10 seconds on Zoom. If we see a hand, we'll call your name. If not, we're going to close it down. Okay, seeing and hearing none, we are going to close public comment for this item, bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, let's start down there. Nate?
So thank you for everyone. Thank you for the comments. I think a lot of them were very well eloquently talked about, and I hope the EIR will address it. A lot of the same concerns that were brought up too as well, so I can concur with a lot of them. One of the things I did want to make sure the EIR did address, Rod, and that is the potential significant impact on the state highway system. So obviously, communicating with Caltrans on that, my understanding is we cannot do another, or Caltrans will not provide another off-ramp in Keene because we're within that mile between Horseshoe Bar and Penryn. So what I'd like to do is ask you to communicate with Caltrans on it and see if there's any significant impacts on the state highway system, because I would imagine there probably is. There is now. Adding another 800 to 1,000 people definitely will. That's it for me. Yield back.
Thank you. Jean, anything else?
No additional comments at this point, and I do again want the public to feel free to add your comments on the forums and write in anything you think of later and send it in by Friday. Thank you. And thanks for coming tonight.
Linda? Okay, I ditto what Jean said. Thank you for coming out tonight. This is a good discussion so far, and I think we gave the consultant and the developer some material to use in adding our concerns to the EIR. I would encourage people to look online and see what other jurisdictions are doing in relation to SB 330. There's quite a few case projects at this point of jurisdictions fighting against SB 330, and I would again encourage you to look at what other jurisdictions have done and where they have where things have ended up with their efforts. So plenty of case law out there at this point. And with that said, we will close this item and move on to the planning director's report. Christy?
Thank you. Before I go into the report, I just want to make mention that the website does have information on SB 330. So if you have questions about what is SB 330, what does it cover, those are all things that can be found on our town's website. And that might help clear up some confusion about what the law allows or prohibits or anything of that nature if you're having questions. So on to the planning director report. General plan update. I'm hoping that we are able to bring this forward to you again at the Planning Commission next month's meeting. We should have the final EIR coming ready for your review, and we'll be bringing the general plan update back around. On the Hidden Grove project, we talked about that today, so I won't go into too much detail. As you know, Rainey is preparing the EIR, and we're looking forward to everyone's written comments. If you have any additional comments you would like to submit, we ask that those comments are submitted by 5 o'clock this Friday. You can email them or mail them or drop them off at Town Hall. Coming later in the year, we will have a zoning ordinance update. So our housing element requires us to update our zoning ordinance to be consistent with our element. So we have a few items coming forward later this year for you. Costco, we're moving ahead. They're getting ready to put the final touches on soon, I am sure. So we're just making sure that they're meeting all their mitigation measurements and all of their requirements for operations so that things are ready to go. The anticipated opening is in April at this point.
And if I could interrupt, and online, I read, and in the paper, they are hiring. So if you know anybody that wants to work at Costco, get your apps in.
Some other miscellaneous projects. We do have an application in from Sierra Foothill Academy. That's an application for design review and modifications to a conditional use permit. We're still working with the applicant on modifications to their project. We continue to receive SB9 project submittals, so we work through those. Those are ministerial actions that town staff needs to handle without planning commission involvement. Quick Quack Car Wash, their application has been submitted, so that will be coming forward in the future. We'll be preparing a mitigated negative declaration for their environmental review document. And that once that's prepared, we will start bringing that forward for your consideration. We also have an application for the Creekstone Senior Living Community Project. That's an application for a 115-unit independent and assisted senior living community, which would be located at Boyington Road and Chisholm Trail. That project is currently under review, and it would also need to undergo a CEQA environmental analysis. So once those items are completed, we will bring that forward to the Planning Commission. Miscellaneous odds and ends, there's free tax preparation at the Loomis Library beginning February 6th. That's by appointment. So please visit the library website for more details, and then they have a link there for you to sign up to have free tax preparation done if you're interested. We continue to have public counter hours Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to noon, and the next Planning Commission meeting will be on February 27th.
Thank you, Christy. Commissioners' reports. Let's start down there. Anything to report, Nate?
Nothing this time. Just again, thanks the town and the public comment, and looking forward to the process and all the hard work you do. Thank you.
Nothing particular.
Wes, I did hear, hi there. Our town manager is here tonight, so I want to take advantage of his presence for just a sec. Wes, I know that at a previous council meeting, it was discussed that the time change for council meetings was being kicked around. How would that relate to planning commission? Would that be a separate action that would be required of town council to change the planning commission time start? Can you fill us in there?
I believe that would be an action of the planning commission itself. You could decide what your start time would be. That would be an action you would do on your own. It wouldn't be a council action item. So the council did decide moving forward, the council's regular meetings will start at 6:30, starting the next meeting on February 13th.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. And that's it for tonight. Thank you again for everybody in the public for coming tonight. We appreciate your presence, and to be continued. This meeting is adjourned.